has improved, or rather increased. The number has reached 292 million, and that's measured from 2022. That's a 20% increase, and in a period of 10 years. An estimated 64 million people worldwide suffer from drug use disorders. Only 1 in 11 of the affected actually get treatment. A new report by the World Health Organization also highlights 3 million annual deaths due to alcohol and drug use. Majority of the victims are men. Apparently, the celebrity culture is also going through the challenges of drug use or drug abuse globally, with key known celebrities such as, and we will look far much back. You may already know names like Marilyn Monroe, who was also associated, her death was associated with drug overdose, drug use, and so was Whitney Houston and many more. You also remember recently the case of P. Diddy, one of the big names in the showbiz industry in the USA. Drugs came constantly during that case, associated with much of what he was accused of. Some have lost their lives. And here at home, one of the mega stars, I say mega stars because it emerged that this gentleman was really loved by many people, music lovers. His name, ATI. His death have also sparked debates around the use of drugs, the use or the misuse of drugs. Some said that drugs have actually become common within the Botswana's showbiz industry, perhaps even beyond the showbiz industry. On the Atlas today, we're looking into this. We are trying to understand what may have caused the openings in Botswana to allow for the prevalence of drugs. And we are joined in the studio to discuss this by Nyakallo Likuta. She is the sociologist and is going to help us understand what is happening in the country in relation to drugs. Welcome to the Atlas.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Let's start here. How did Botswana get here, where it's now known that drugs are prevalent in the country, even easy to access by many people? Largely, people have said within the showbiz industry, it's even worse.
Well, that's definitely true, as indicated by the data that you just gave us, that unfortunately substance abuse is rampant, prevalent, and is exacerbating. You'll find that the fundamental behind addiction is that the brain loses its capacity to rationally put in place priorities based on the inability to maintain cognitive integrity. And that's very chemical language to just say that it becomes overwhelmed and thereby your functions are compromised. So the reason we found that the prevalence of substance abuse has increased so much is that we've had increased mental health crisis. And this isn't unique to Botswana. But if you recall, we recently did go through a few years of moving past the pandemic, and there was a lot of isolation, depression, and deviation from our natural ways of life. And that also compounds on top of the existent economic strain we long already had. And like you indicated, males uniquely suffer very seriously when they're unable to provide for themselves.
Mm-hmm. People say that celebrities mostly are using drugs as an escape route. What are they escaping from?
Popular life, fame, celebrity life is characterized by an industry whereby there's a lot of exposure. It's heavily laden with the glorification of these substances and not enough indication of the ramifications. It's also very isolating to be popular. You don't know the sincerity of the people who come around you. But there's also a lot of, misuse and extortion and misusing people's presence. You don't know who truly is invested and cares about you.
Mm-hmm. Let's look at the factors that you could say when you look at what we were talking about first, how did Botswana get here? The issue of mainstream media, consumption of mainstream media products, by celebrities and those who support them. Let's talk about social challenges. And one would say that even the exposure to global circumstances, how do they play a role in how one is able to withstand or fail to withstand the pressure that comes with, that forces them to use drugs?
Okay. Of course, I'll say there isn't particularly force, but there's a lot of peer pressure and encouragement and sometimes adulation when one partakes. For example, unfortunately, in some pockets, Botswana, you'll find it's kind of a rite of passage to graduate into a certain substance, specifically alcohol, and media and entertainment plays their part in this. Substances can be looked at as being classy or something that you kind of reward yourself with. They're framed in colors that make it look more attractive and interesting, specifically to youth. And for that reason, when a person has the access that comes with the financial thriving in the entertainment world, you're able to afford it, frankly, and sustain that habit at least for a while. But then the problem comes when you don't have your fundamentals in place that give you the internal integrity to not partake.
Okay, I think I'm going to ask you to just talk about if we agree that some people use drugs as an escape route from whatever pressure they feel. What can be done? What can become that escape route that will be acceptable?
As opposed to the substance abuse?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, there's fundamentals specifically that are used in rehabilitation. For example, there's the principle of the 4 Ps, and that talks about people, places, purpose, and persistence. And though typically that's applied once substance abuse has begun, it can also be used preemptively. Who are you associating with? What are their intentions for you? What is the nature of that relationship? Is it authentic? Is it nourishing? And what about the places? Are you going to places of upliftment that are safe and healthy and conducive or not? And what about your purpose? Do you feel like you've heard your calling? Are you doing it right now, or do you feel like you're in the wrong place? Something as small as just being in a career that you really didn't want to and neglecting something you actually wanted to do can cause a huge amount of susceptibility. And then finally, the one we spoke about, we have persistence, is that you have to have a sustained mentality of completely desisting and have your internal frame of sobriety, ultimately.
You remember the names that I mentioned earlier on, Marilyn Monroe, P. Diddy, Whitney Houston. Those are names of, you could say, wealth. Those are people who are wealthy. And this is why it was not surprising that they could afford the drugs. What makes it easy for the celebrities in Africa, let's talk about Botswana, to afford drugs? Is it something that is not expensive?
It certainly is expensive. But of course, that's specific to whichever drug you're talking about. There are variations that are understood to be much cheaper and thereby more affordable to more people and hence can be more rampant. I know in specifically rural areas, there's methcathinone that can be called CAT, and that one's very rampantly used specifically among the youth. But look, ultimately, because addiction is progressive, this means that while one can occasionally frequent a substance, it then becomes a preference, then a dependency, and then an addiction whereby people lose their homes and sell cars to maintain this addiction.
Let's talk about someone would say, how are artists and any other person who maybe find themselves in a situation where you just realize that you have now become a customer to drug peddlers? How can the nation assist? And at what time can the nation or the government step in?
I'll start with the government side.
Yeah.
Institutionally speaking, that's as much of an onus that government could have. Establishments could be funded, subsidized, resourced better to assist the population that they understand has this kind of problem. There could be awareness campaigns also. There also could definitely be the increased education fundamentally to really pull back the curtain regarding the effects of these substances.
Okay, are the youth of this country protected from those who are peddling drugs? Has the government made it difficult, or is it making it difficult for them to access drugs?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Yes. Before I put it as though this is a lack of government participation, because we do have our laws. Those have been very clear and they're very firm. We also have the fact that they've been circumvented by digital presence. Peddlers, dealers, these groups and farms are accessing our children in our own homes without even parental knowledge. So that's why I go back to government can only do so much.
Mm-hmm. The role of media. Let's talk about the role of the media. In developed nations, it is sometimes said that the blame also lies with media, what it peddles, what it dishes out to the market. What would you say the culture of drug use in Botswana can be associated to media contribution to, let's say, maybe making those who use drugs to appear like these are the pace setters?
I think I would find that definitely the impressionability of media consumers it varies, but depending on who is being, idolized and appreciated and pushed forward and looked at as successful, it can be enticing to emulate any behavior they have. So if they were perhaps a sober, rationally minded, balanced person, that would be the impression left. But unfortunately, when it comes to substance, we might risk the fact that substance abuse is the mark that's left. But the good part about that is there's redemption arcs. There's many artists and famous people, even around the world, who recover and turn around and actually become inspirational figures for people who ended up venturing into substance abuse.
Okay, what should we expect from international organizations to help countries like Botswana or individual countries to fight the transportation of drugs until they reach our shores? Is there anything that can be expected between nations and global institutions to help one another to fight the transportation of drugs to even countries like Botswana?
Absolutely. I think we spoke briefly just earlier talking about the access factor and how that's definitely a focus that can be platformed and put at the forefront. But the equation is twofold. While access can be controlled, there's still the matter of desire and intent. Design intent is internal. And ultimately, especially with the digital platforms we're speaking about, those can easily circumvent government efforts. But like you're saying, governments can have legislation, policy, jurisdiction to make it much more difficult and very much punishable in the event that one is caught undertaking the trafficking of some of these substances.
Okay, maybe just to sum it up, I want you to just share with us what is it that you think can be done immediately to address the situation?
Well, different nations have taken various approaches,
Yeah.
but there are a few examples and some of them are still debatable and I don't know how applicable they are, but to table some of them, for example, some nations in the West have taken the stop and frisk. These are spontaneous searches. This means that whether it's being stopped at a traffic light or at a police stop, they have the right to, especially under specific suspicion, look around and see what people are carrying. This reduces the tendency for people to mobilize with these substances or feel comfortable even going to retrieve them. Another thing that can definitely be done is improved surveillance. We have digital technologies that can be utilized to follow suspected offenders who engage in this behavior and keep tracking that they don't have recidivism and return to the habits of participating in that drug trafficking. I think another thing that we can do is incentivize whistleblowing. This is twofold. We need to understand that when we come forward with information, if you're a person who knows of a dealer or a person who is enabling this behavior, that you will be protected, but also that you can trust that these institutions are intending to do something with this intel. Because the other side is even when people do report, sometimes they don't have faith that much will be done, so it just becomes a casual cause that they don't pursue.
Are we exposed to being used as peddlers?
I believe there is awareness, but it's very targeted and specific.
Okay.
But because that underworld is very much nefarious and laden with such distrust and secrecy, I think it's going to be a very complex process to unravel the threads of what has been sitting at the underbelly of our society that's now coming to the surface a little bit more.
Maybe just to conclude, I want you to, a few seconds, the PAC, Public Accounts Committee, learned from the director of GIS that if I were to expose the names of those who are involved in drugs, you will be surprised. Why do you think he's not exposing them, those names?
Well, in those circles and those environments, unfortunately, because this is a matter that is highly secretive and is under the thumbs of people who aren't particularly ethical, there's a lot of safety risk that comes with whistleblowing, with speaking out, with disclosures. I think also there's the consideration of the most immediate needs, that you do want to keep your job. You do want to make sure that as you report, you're falling within the parameter of what your position allows you to disclose. Sometimes there's investigation still ongoing, and maybe the fruits of that can be 5 to 10 years from now, but we'll just have to keep waiting and seeing, and hopefully we can have more government support for whistleblowers going forward.
Okay. Sociologist Nyakalo Likuta, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate your time and input on this topic.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.